And I was thinking to myself, well, if we come up with them or we give like fake alias names as if some random person put it in, but really it would just be us, it wouldn't be super sincere. So I molded the idea a little bit to have 5 categories in which ChatGPT is going to ask us on-the-spot questions that we do not know.
Mm-hmm. So we do have a special guest, which is ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 4 of season 4 of Theo Thoughts. It's the golden episode, 4-4.
Welcome one, welcome all.
Yeah.
To, already 4 weeks.
Yep. And even like double that time in school.
What?
Because we're approaching like week.
I don't want to
week
hear
8.
that. I don't want to hear that. All I know is that time's flying by too fast.
It's going crazy. It's going crazy.
And with time flying by so fast, we are getting up into this season in numbers of episodes, and we ran out of topic ideas.
Yeah.
So we had an idea to where typically whenever we have a episode concept, we have at least a little bit of time to let it marinate.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that last week of like sometimes we're like super planned ahead, like planning after this week's episode, we'd be planning immediately for next week's. And sometimes life.
Right. And this morning I was laying in bed. I got 10 and a half hours of sleep. I get a text message from this guy. And he says, "Hey, what are we talking about today?" I'm like, "Oh, shoot, I have no idea." My wife says, "Well, I think it'd be cool if you guys came up with like some panel questions." So a lot of podcasts give out advice for different scenarios. And I was thinking to myself, well, if we come up with them or we give like fake alias names as if some random person put it in, but really it would just be us, it wouldn't be super sincere. So I molded the idea a little bit to have 5 categories in which ChatGPT is going to ask us on-the-spot questions that we do not know.
Mm-hmm. So we do have a special guest, which is ChatGPT.
ChatGPT.
And so
which really it's been a third member of the podcast from the beginning.
It's been kind of our fact checker of when one of us is starting to say something, we want to make sure that we're not misleading or that we're not misquoting something. And so kind of have it as a live thing, so we're not like just spouting off a bunch of stuff that isn't true. Just have a quick fact checker helper.
Right.
But yeah, so did not preemptively insert the questions or plan them out. So I'm currently asking ChatGPT about our first category of questions regarding friendships.
Yes, we have 5 categories today. We're going to ask 5 different questions from 5 different perspectives, and we're going to answer those questions. And that's all for you today, listener. So thank you for listening in. Judd, I hope you're having a good day.
I'm doing pretty good, actually. I had work this morning and workouts before that.
Ooh.
And so I've been up for a bit, but I'm doing good.
Nice. And it's a beautiful day outside.
Yeah. Absolutely
gorgeous. We got the lily over in the corner here that they tried to throw into the garbage. We know who you are.
So, ChatGPT.
All right.
We got first question. How do you believe your faith influences the way you choose your friends?
That's a really good question. So I think from the very beginning, if you want me to answer this, unless you want to take it, I think from the very beginning, whenever you live out your faith, which isn't super easy to do all the time, I feel that whenever you live out your faith, your friends sort of pop up with your interactions with everyday people. Does that make sense? Yeah. They were supposed to shine a light.
Right.
And your best friends are people who hold you accountable. Your best friends are people who you can speak to and who speak to you. So, I mean, like if there's a pyramid of the people who you hold relationships with, at the top of that pyramid is the people who you share faith with.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you described it once on the podcast, but you talked about like kind of the levels of like pals, friends, and brothers.
Yeah.
Kind of where like you have your you got your regular, just
buddies.
You know them in passing. You wave to each other. Say how's it going. You got your friends that you sometimes do activities with or go out to eat with, and then you have your brothers who are the closest inner circle. And I think in a similar way, Jesus kind of had a similar group of the disciples were his brothers. The 12 disciples, those were the closest knit people. But then he had other disciples and other followers, and not to say that they were any less. This may not be the best example, but like in terms of like the ones that were like getting the most regular teaching and regular preparation, there were the 12, and then there were the rest of the disciples and followers, and then there were the people that he would go out to on the street and wave to and say hello and like offer a word of encouragement. But of course that's a little bit different because Jesus intimately knows every single person. We don't intimately know every single person.
Correct.
And so for us, at least when I think about it, it doesn't take a lot of effort to say hello to someone in just the fact of like some people have no friends. And so even just a little amount of effort can mean a lot to someone, to just making the start of what could be a friendship. But I really like what you said, because I think when I think about this question, excuse me, choosing your friends is definitely the ones that influence you. Right. And so finding those people that can build into you and that you can build into. Like when I think of accountability partners, I think of like, I want you to like hold up a mirror of the man that I want to be. And when I'm falling beneath that image, you hold up that mirror and is like, Judd, this is who you're supposed to be, man. Stay on it.
And there's a definite like, so I'm going to propose an idea. I don't think that you should ever do this idea. But if you do it intrinsically with yourself in your head, that's an okay thing. Take a look at the people you spend the most time with, and then you set up a tier list for who is your best friend and why. What qualities make them your best friends? The odds are the people who, like we say, keep you accountable, the people who keep you on the right track, the people who do all the positive things in your life, ultimately, you're going to highlight the people who aren't as positive in your life, who you are friends. And like sometimes, just to be factual, I think that you run into, if you look deep enough, you're going to run into the fact that like this person's just friends with me because I do things for them. And I think in our faith, it is the complete opposite of that. Like our best friends are people who sacrifice for us, or people who love us in the best of ways, even to like what Christ says, there is no greater friend than one who lays down his life for his friend, or love than lays down his life for his friend. You get the idea. Friend is in there. Yeah. So if you were to take a look at everybody who you would call your friends, pals, buddies, brothers, acquaintances, friends. Yeah. You would find that typically the ones who are the highest up are the ones with the best characteristics following this like morality that we look into, because it really shapes you up to be the perfect friend. Yeah,
for sure. I asked it to give me 10 and then going from like picking 5 from this list. And we already answered kind of another one, how important is accountability in Christian friendships and how do we practice it. So we already kind of went into that. Another really good one, how do you view friendships with non-Christians, and what boundaries, if any, do you set? I think I've got something for this one. Okay. So I have some people very close to me who are not just like, oh yeah, I've been to church, or like kind of on the wayside, like full on like non-Christian, like borderline agnostic or just full atheist. Right. But these, especially 2 people that I'm thinking of, are very close to me, and I've known them for 15 plus years, and they've been a part of my life and have had influence in my life in many different wonderful ways. But I think it's so important to be friends with non-Christians, but especially to nurture those friendships, because if someone, especially a non-Christian, still feels comfortable being your friend while you are a Christian, that says a lot, because a lot of times non-Christians don't like Christians because they have either been hurt by the church or by another Christian that acted poorly.
Yeah, they ignore the logs in their own eyes.
Yes. And so for someone to see you as still a friend, even while you're a Christian, and they don't believe that is something that needs to be very, very nurtured.
Absolutely. I've been told by a friend who I have been told, and he's not a Christian. He grew up, I think his grandparents were pretty, which is, I think, common. Yeah. The older generation is typically more in tune with the church. But whenever I first met him, it was all just like making fun of what I believe, which is okay. Like you gotta have like a hissed skin if you're a Christian, because like if you can't take a joke,
right,
against what you believe, like how can you really defend it?
Right.
You know? So he used to make fun of me for it, and then we used to get into theological arguments all the time of like what was real, what wasn't. And then like slowly over time, he would ask me for advice on things that mattered. And at first it maybe it wouldn't have mattered as much, but like and in our encounters, I wouldn't have necessarily inserted my opinion, but if he would have asked me, I would have answered.
Yeah.
And then I think that there is, and I maybe kissed this a little bit in the previous question, but I think that there really is a sense of like respect for morality whenever you follow the Bible. I mean, even in Islam, the Islamic people respected the Christians because they were the people of the book. They had a set of guidelines with which they would follow. And I think there's a bit of an intrinsic, even if you don't notice that right away, it's like this person, there's been some messed up things in the name of Christianity, but overall, that's not the Christian way. That's not. This person is here to help me. And it's turned into like, I have a quote of, he told me one time in a pretty big situation, Jordan, your word is the only one that I count on in situations like this. And I think to myself, you don't even agree with what I believe.
Right, but he recognizes the wisdom that you carry.
Because of what I believe.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Definitely. Yeah, that's 100%. Like also, one of my friends, he had asked me like a ton of questions of like the different problems that he had with Christianity. I'm like, just like, I don't understand just like why you guys believe this or how this could be like, but this makes more sense. Mm-hmm. But he was actually kind of getting more close to the truth. He had just only experienced Christianity from the end of somebody else's finger pointing down at him. But once I started talking to him more about actually what I live and how I practice it out, and I wasn't even trying to like convert him. I think that's also a big thing, is that your non-Christian friends, it should not be an endeavor to like every conversation be trying to convert them, because that does not work and that'll push them away. But just living, and like when you said like letting the light shine, let the light do its work.
Absolutely.
And that has fostered and prospered into some really great things. And I have learned how to love better by having these conversations and interactions with these friends, because they are like, that's who Jesus is after. And so I'm learning how to love better, how to communicate better with my words in ways that are loving to Christians, to non-Christians, to people who don't even know. And I am not thankful that they are struggling, but I'm thankful for the experience and the wisdom that God has granted me through this experience.
Right. And I think of Christ whenever he says, isn't it the sick who need a doctor? When you go to the doctor's office, 9 times out of 10, unless it's House, which I don't know if you know what I'm referring to.
Yes, I know House.
But he's not going to call you an idiot for getting sick.
Right, yeah.
He's going to say, oh, I'm sorry that you feel this way. Here, let me help you get better.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
He has the knowledge. He has the know-how. He knows the right way to do things.
Yeah.
So in the same sense, we aren't to be the doctor who says, if you want to view yourself that way. So we aren't to be the doctor who's like, you idiot, how could you have licked that snot? I can't believe you. You're an idiot.
Yeah.
So, just judgment is something that I would stray away from.
Right. Yeah, especially. Yeah, that's good.
I like this so far, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's going good. I mean, ChatGPT is pulling out some good questions for a language model.
So, it's been about 13 minutes. You want to move on to the next one? We got 5 categories here. Okay,
so next category is work.
Work, another huge part of our lives.
I've got maybe a question or a response. I'm curious what ChatGPT is going to come up with.
Yeah. So ChatGPT, what do you have to say about work? I don't know what perspective that you're coming in from, but thank you all guys all again for listening and watching. I hope you're enjoying the new view of the camera. You can see our beautiful faces.
Sorry, it's generating them.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So this work, relating to careers, also how Christians operate in their current work, because there are a lot more jobs today than there were 2,000 years ago.
Of course.
And so there's a lot more places to have missionary possibilities or other things. Okay, so how do you balance your professional ambitions and work life with your spiritual values?
That's really tough, especially because I'm going to be working in the school.
Yeah.
And the school is I'm a PE major, for those of you who don't know. So I'm going to be working in the school pretty soon, and the school is part of the state. It's run by the state, typically. Yeah. So there is this made-up little thing called the separation of church and state, where I don't necessarily have the freedom to live it out, but like share what I believe in the aspects that I want to.
Right.
So it's a tricky one, but I'll actually let you go first here.
Yeah. So for me, I'm an engineering major, and I wrote a paper about this, ish, and this may lead into a different question. But in terms of like some more of the ethical dilemmas, which I think is kind of what you're leading into, in engineering. So I want to create things, I want to build things, and honestly, there was a movie Oppenheimer. Yeah. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, it talks about, the creation of the atom bomb, which is one of the greatest feats of engineering and physics all put together into one, and the culmination of quantum physics.
They called it Fat Man.
Yeah. And, but before that movie came out, I was been like, if I make something that, was sold to the military or something, that's fine. But then after watching that movie, I started to feel more uneasy about the thought of I create something that is used to then bring harm to other people, or even to possibly kill other people. And that that made me feel not good. And so one thing now, especially with maintaining the Christian morals, I only want to create things that help make things better or help make things more efficient for people that have needs. I'm currently looking into post graduation. I'm starting to look at companies working in prosthetics because I want to try and help design things that actually help give people back something that they've lost.
That's cool.
And so for me, it works a little bit better, but it's also if I came up with an idea for something that could have military applications, I may have to lockbox, throw it in the river kind of thing. Because even if it could be successful and make money, is that the legacy I want to leave? Thinking of Oppenheimer, the father of the atom bomb, which when it was used was the greatest, killing in all of human history. I do not want to be known for that.
Right.
I only want my legacy to be Jesus. And in that way, I want to make sure that what I am helping add to the world is adding to the people's betterment.
Right.
And so for me, that's how that works.
Yeah, it's pretty noble. That's pretty noble. And I don't know if it's as noble as yours, but I think that as a teacher, where I necessarily can't preach out what I believe as much, I just think it's paramount that I make a difference.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm coaching.
Right.
So, I think there's a little more leniency with prayer and faith and coaching. I know before every track meet and football game in high school in the locker room, we sat down and had a prayer. And at halftime or before the game, we would pray too, which was something that was a tradition. But I think it made a difference. For other people, it was just something you did. But for me, because I did the praying my senior year at halftime, and it made a big difference. But once again, I just think it's paramount to make a difference. I want other people, I want to be so good at my job and so good at reaching out to the kids who don't have such a good home life that they're I want what he has, you know? Because then if they come search after what I have after school, then I'm totally allowed to. I'll be like, well, come to church.
Yeah.
Come see what I believe has to offer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think it's also going back to that light of preaching the gospel all the time, and then when necessary use words. So you'll be able to just being that affirming, encouraging, fun, PE coach, that can be the best part of the kid's day. I know PE was one of my favorite classes in elementary school and middle school. And when the right person has that position, they can have so much influence on that kid's day. And so even just being yourself that you are now, that's that can put a lot of smiles on kids' faces.
Yeah.
And that can be all the light in the world.
And that's ultimately the goal. It's light shine bright everywhere you go.
Yeah. For real.
Illuminating the soul, where Toby Mac says. So just shine in your workplace no matter where you can, with the words that you can use and the words that you can't use.
Right.
We're supposed to demonstrate that.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So this kind of leads into the next question. So how do you witness or share your faith with colleagues in a respectful and non-intrusive way?
Well, I kind of feel like these are all sort of coming to a crux at the same thing.
Yeah.
You know? Just demonstration. Like, you can tell the difference between a teacher who goes in between every class to the teacher's lounge and just spills all the tea. It's just, oh, this kid is terrible. This kid is this kid is that. And then the teacher who goes and talks to the kid and, like, tries to make a difference, saying, like, hey, how can I help you in this classroom? And, like, knows all the best practices for doing what they're supposed to do and, like, helping the betterment rather than complaining to other people just for them to hear you speak.
Right.
So just doing the right things, being the right person, setting the right standard.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think for me, I actually think of my dad as a good example. So he has a managerial position. He's like 1 month away from retirement, which is awesome. Sweet. But in that time, he has always maintained certain convictions, and it's a very common thing for, like, work colleagues to just say like, oh, hey, let's all go get a drink after work together. And my dad would not say, like, oh, I'm holier than thou, so I'm not going to go. But he said, I'll go and I'll drive. So, like, he would just go and he'd get a water, and then he'd still, like, be with them and talk with them, but he'd get a water and then offer to, drive everybody back to their respective wherever they needed to be. And in that way, he was like, it was the same kind of thing of, like, Jesus sitting with all of the people that were sick, and the Pharisees were looking like, what are you doing sitting with them? He's like, Jesus is like, well, they need me here. Like, I'm not going to do anything for them when I'm gone out of here. And so in that, like, he wasn't, like, shaming them for, wanting to maybe get a little drunk, but he was just being with them and just saying, just like, I'll make sure you're good. I'll make sure you're safe.
Yeah. And then, like, outside of everybody just thinking you're a good guy, which is always a positive thing. Like, everybody wants to be, if they did look intrinsically and say, like, who are my best friends? Like, who make the best examples on me? Like, this kid's a good guy. Like, he's a really, really good guy, and I respect him a lot for that. And the older people get, the more that matters.
Right.
But I get reminded of, like, as far as the workplace goes, I get reminded of the movie Courageous, and I can't remember the Hispanic guy's name. Do you remember what it is?
It's been a few years since I've seen it.
Well, he's going into an interview to get a higher position, and they ask him to lie on some documents, and he says, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And then they're like, son of a gun, you're hired because he didn't lie.
Right.
Like, we need somebody with integrity.
Yeah.
It's something as simple as that. Like, don't lay down your integrity. Stick to what you believe, because that's really what we're called to do.
Right.
Reckless abandon.
Yeah. I've got one more question that I think is really good. How do you balance your commitment to your job or even / school work with your commitment to serving God in your community? And I had a conversation with somebody recently about this in a very similar way of, like, especially, like, right now, it feels like burnout. Like, we're in our senior year, we're doing a lot of work, we're busy, we're already saying how we're already in, like, multiple weeks here, and it's just going by, but we're just trying to go through the motions. And sometimes it feels just like, because I know God called me here to Greenville. I know God called me for engineering. He's placed that gift many, many years ago. And so this is the path that I know I'm supposed to be on. But in some of the things that I need to do for this path, like for engineering, it feels like part of it sometimes takes away from the Spirit, or, like, drains from the Spirit a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was talking with somebody that said, like, thinking of, like, you got to do this hard work now because of the work that God has for you after. And then so I ask, so do I have to sacrifice part of my spirit now for the Spirit I know I will have?
Yeah.
And so it's figuring out how do you maintain your spiritual, overfilling, full cup while doing some of the hard work that maybe, because I could be, a few hundred years ago, I could be an engineer without having to go to all crazy school, and I could just start making things. But now I need certifications. I need licenses in order to do the things I want to help people. I need to do some of this other stuff that maybe wasn't originally God intended, but I need to do it. And it's really weird dichotomy of God called me here. Part of it's draining, and so I need to stay filled, but also not have the mindset of let myself go now so that I can, bounce back later.
Right. What is it good for a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? I think about that.
Yeah.
Which is that's a Toby Mac thing.
Yeah.
Again, it's 2 Toby Macs in one episode. But, typically the outlook that I have is, it's somewhat similar. You got to check yourself before you commit to the outlook.
Right.
Because, ultimately you have to do it God's way. But if I see a negative, if I see it didn't work out, Jordan, it's not going to work out for you because of what you believe, then God had a better thing in store.
Right. Yeah.
But you got to make sure that what you want to have happen is what you think God wants to have happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You have to have your priorities straight
Right.
with what the Lord has, because then it's I was trying to do this really, 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 really big thing for me. Has nothing to do with the Lord. Because generally, if you're following what you think that the Lord has for you and his plan and where he's pushing you and it doesn't work out, then there's a lot more confusion. But if you weren't doing that and it didn't work out, then duh.
Right. Yeah. I think also one of the biggest things is really intentionally following the commandment of Sabbath. And not just going to church with your family on Sunday and not working on the weekend, but intentional, godly, present rest.
Yeah.
And that I think
is
is so important, because it feels like just the norm to be burnt out, to be always working. That's the American culture. It's you do the 9 to 5, and then you go to church on Sunday, and then you just rinse and repeat over and over and over.
Yeah.
And
like some sort of horrible exercise program.
Yeah, it's like nonstop
not a relationship.
hit circuit.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And so maintaining strict Sabbath, whether that is literally nothing else but the Lord today, or taking the occasional day of just I can't work today, I need to be with my family. Being very intentional about if you're working to provide so much to the point that you're losing the time, then we're missing the mark somewhere.
Or even if you're worried so much about yourself,
right?
Your own entertainment.
Yeah. And so then that's the point where we got to readjust. All right. So next we have history.
History. Now this is what I was looking forward to.
Yeah. And so
we're both we both like the history books a little bit, interested in especially biblical history.
Yes.
So
now this we're going to try something a little bit different. Asking it. So the past 2 sections have just been questions in general, no perspective, no bias. We're going to try and have ChatGPT give a little bit of agnostic or atheist bias in some of these questions. So these might come off a little bit more targeted, of just how do you explain?
You might see 2 humbled boys here. Not necessarily humbled. We're not cocky, but it doesn't mean we're going to have the answer to all the questions.
Yes, but this is also important because there are some things that we don't know, some things that we maybe need to spend more time on, some things that we have to give to God, and some things where we have to, consult Munshaw again.
Oh, for sure,
yeah.
Or Dunkley. People with wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to, this morning whenever I thought of this topic, I wanted it to be a little bit of a change, because this is outside of the realm of advice. With the other, this is topic number 3. So with the other 2 topics thus far, it's been advice, what's our outlook on how we live our lives. But this is a test of what we know. This is a test of really what we believe, what we follow in a antagonistic sense. So we got them? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're generating. Okay. All right. Here's an interesting one. This is the first one. How have religious institutions shaped historical events, and how would history have unfolded without them? So this is, I think, just looking at one kind of Christianity's impact on world history.
Yeah. So I think a lot of places, and you'd agree with me on this, and a lot of places in history, the church has actually been a very negative impacting thing in history. I guess in history, it's been this way in history. It's not good grammar. It wouldn't get a good grade on a paper, but it's the truth. I mean, if you look at the Crusades, I really don't think they were done for the right reasons.
No, they weren't. Not the brightest spot in.
But
Christian
that
history.
doesn't, and I think this is a huge disparity between the truth that we believe and things done in the name of Christianity, because people say like, oh, you're claiming that whenever you believe Christianity, you're claiming all of the people who have done wrong in the name of it, but we're not.
It's not. That's the same with like every single thing. If you have 1% of a 99% group of people that goes extreme in one way, and then assuming that when they do it, all of the 99 also think that way, or like vice versa, is not the case.
Well, and a lot of people think that Christianity is a super like aggressive belief, and it's like, oh, you have to believe our way or you're going to hell.
Right.
No, I really don't think. I think it's an uncomfortable religion. I think it's made to make you uncomfortable because there's an honest truth, which is why I also think that it's so ostracized today in comparison to other religions. You never hear people complaining about Hinduism or some other religion. You never hear that. But I guess to answer the question, how it would have, what was it? It was how it would have changed.
How did the rise and fall of different religious empires, or basically in our sense, the Christianity, impact the development? Whoops, sorry, wrong question. Shape historical events, and how would history have unfolded without them?
Negatively, I think it's impacted, but I think it's impacted even more for the positive.
Christianity, post Jesus, like those first few hundred years right after, were like some of the craziest growth, because like then we started to get like the Roman Catholic Church, which was the church, and like that spread across Eurasia, Africa, like wildfire. And I think in that sense, like it started to unify people in a certain way. I also think of hospitals started out as like Christian charity groups opening up like homes to take in sick and help them get better. And like that's even where like St. John's or St. Paul's, like these are hospitals that are like named after saints, because it started as a Christians offering the charity of like caregiving, and then it has just continued to go further. And so that's one of the ways that I think that Christianity has really helped develop, is like the way of hospitals and of like people need health care, and so we want to make sure that we're equipped to help.
Well, and in the typical sense, I would say that the places that the church did do wrong, it wasn't the church, it was someone's own ambition using religion negatively. Yeah. So in reference to the the Roman Catholic Church, or the Holy Catholic Empire, really, that it was. Yeah. The popes typically weren't very good dudes. The king set the pope, and then the pope set the king, and then there was this loop of power, this figure eight of power, who they didn't know who really was in control. Right. And that's where you get into like the whole like Charlemagne and the emperor and all this stuff. But like really, it was just people who wanted power, and religion was a way to control people. But that doesn't mean that the religion itself was bad. Right. I think that it was used wrong. So like we get into the same conversation we have today with gun control. Yeah, or even it's the people that are the problem, in my opinion. You can disagree with me. That's okay. Please don't flood the comments.
I would say more similar like slavery, because slavery was used like with the Bible, like especially the like slaves obey your masters. Like that's a verse in the Bible. Yes. But it was taken out of context and used and shoved in the face of people and saying just like, well, this is what God says, but they were taking it because it's like, well, I don't have to work, so. And it says these three words here. We're just going to take out all of the other stuff, but slaves obey your masters.
Which wasn't the point. Right. No. It wasn't the point for them it wasn't supposed to be a scapegoat for you to be able to have slaves. It was because slavery was such a normal thing.
It was also like the word slave also meant servant, and it was more just like, it is like don't be rebellious for rebellion's sake. Like, don't, like, in the terms of, like, uprising and all of that, like, not everything, because, like, Jesus also didn't fight the Romans. Like, that's what the Jewish people wanted.
Yeah.
He wanted them to be their warrior king that, you know, took away that oppression. Not to say that it was fine or acceptable, but just, like, a feeling of, like, Jesus wasn't looking to radically change the cultural norms, but more some of the spiritual norms. And then knowing that things, like, the right people start to progress. And so, like, we have what I'm very thankful for, you know, part of Free Methodist teaching and, like, Wesleyans, like the Wesleys, like, free Methodists.
Yeah, that's the whole
just
point.
Like, we're not doing slaves here.
No slaves
like,
here.
Yeah. And so that's, you know, waiting for the right person to realize, like, you know what, you know, it is time to change now. So,
and also, and maybe to cap off this question, I would look into the founding of the nation that we call home. You know, like, at the very beginning, the United States was a prosperous nation because it built its foundations upon the word and upon the belief that they had. And as we have strayed away from that, it has gone down and down and down the hole. So keeping that in mind, I guess ultimately to answer the question is, it's been positive. History has been shaped positively by the use of Christianity, though there has been negatives, but that wasn't the religion's problem. That wasn't the relationship's problem. Jesus never said we should do any of those things.
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right.
So we touched on about, like, 3 other questions when talking about that. So honestly, we kind of already talked about a lot of the other things. I guess just some other comments on, like, Christianity in history. Like, what year is it? And, like, it's 2024 AD, like, in the year of the Lord.
Or
and,
CE.
Yeah,
oh, I hate that.
Common era. But, like, that actually, you know Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Of course.
So he actually said one point why he uses AD still.
Gregorian monks.
Yes, respecting that, like, the way our calendar is like the most efficient way of, like, tracking everything, and it was made by these Gregorian monks in, you know, wanting to bring the root back to Christ, and, like, the honor and the respect of that. It's like the same way, like, when somebody comes up with a new element and then they get to name it, and then we still call it after that. It's just like, you know, well, they put in the work, they discovered it, and now I get to use it, and so I'm going to, you know, show some respect to them.
And it's still the calendar we use
and
today.
So, yeah, and not, you know, saying just, like, respect to the AD, but just, like, that Christ's life has had still such an influence that we're still tracking, you know, how far along we are since Christ.
Right.
And, you know, that's really cool, because, like, every time, you know, you write at the top of your paper the date, you're writing, you know, how far back Christ was, and that's, you know, your connection to him.
Yeah, for real. You think Christ doesn't, our culture doesn't revolve around some semblance of him? Check the date, baby.
Yeah. And, like, there are plenty of other things, like, even, the English word goodbye.
Yeah.
Stems
God
from,
be with you. Yeah.
Yes, God be with you. So every time you say goodbye, you're like, you know, God be with you.
Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's still shaping, and it brings people together. And, like, there are certain things that are, you know, seen as secular, but they stem from Christian tradition or teachings, and they are, like, a focal point of part of who we are today, and both secular and non-secular. So I think that's really cool.
Very cool. Any more questions? Are you ready for the next topic?
I think we're good for the next topic, which is family.
Very cool. Family. They say whenever you get married, the biggest arguments that you can have are about sex, family, and money. So family's obviously a big thing that you can talk about in marriage, outside of marriage, in regular life. A lot of people have a lot of problems with their family. And we as the people of the book like to think that we have a way about this. So you got the questions?
Yeah.
Generation.
Okay. How do you prioritize faith within your family life?
Oh, Well, this is relatively easy. I'm a little bit of an outlier here because all of my cousins are pastors' kids. All my uncles are pastors. A handful of my aunts are pastors. My grandma and grandpa are both ordained on my dad's side, which is the side of the family that we always have one.
Yeah.
Typically, there's one side of the family that's favored. But as for my other side, maybe I shouldn't get so personal. I don't know. I'll let you go first, Jen.
Okay.
I don't want to misspeak.
So faith within our family. I think not the routine of going to church on Sundays, but like the get to go to church on Sundays. And like if a family does it the right way, like it can be something really good. But just like not following in the routine of just like, oh, it's Sunday. All right, we're all going to church.
Yeah.
It's all right, guys, it's Sunday. We get to go to church today.
Yes.
And it's the mindset change. And I think that is something that's very unifying, because it's like it goes back to like traditions, because like tradition is an aspect. Of course, it's important to know why you practice a tradition, but like I am really thankful for the tradition of like, you wake up and you start your day together, and then you start it with the Lord at church, and then you go back home, and then you share intimate meal together,
right?
And either do something with each other or rest in the Lord. And I think that is something very important, because it's time together.
There is so much beauty and purpose. There is a super negative thing going around just about going through the motions. We talked about it with work, just working your tail off all week, going to church on Sunday, making sure you check that off the box, and then starting again. Like that's what makes Monday so negative. But whenever there's a purpose to why you do things every day of the week, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And like knowing the purpose for that.
Right.
That way people never fall out of like it's a crazy number of people who grow up in the church who leave by the time they're an adult.
Yeah.
Why? Because they don't understand the purpose. The
Right.
purpose isn't communicated. It is the same. We go to church on Sunday because it's just what we do. They don't know why.
Yeah.
You sit through church and then the parents have a bad attitude because it's boring. Well, yeah, it's boring. Sometimes what isn't boring sometimes? You can watch your favorite TV show and there's going to be a filler episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think there is so much beauty and purpose, because whenever you realize like, hey, we are thanking the Lord for our food. Like this is not ours. Like we worked the land, but the Lord made it grow.
Yeah.
There's purpose in everything, and there's beauty in that purpose, and it gives your life way more meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Another question kind of leading into it. What role does prayer play in strengthening your family relationships?
I mean, Christ is the strengthener. Like he is the glue that holds the entire apparatus together.
Yeah.
So without it, it's going to fall apart.
Yeah.
You can tell about a family who prays intimately together and a family who doesn't. In a scientific experiment, I'm going to say this confidently, you will see a difference. Somebody do it. You will see a difference. Even within the church, you will see a difference for a family who takes it seriously, for a family who just goes Sunday to Sunday.
Yeah. I spent prayer, especially communal prayer together, is so powerful. And like also like in the role of like parents praying over children, like even when they don't know it. Like I know every night my parents pray for me. And when I'm with my parents and it falls to night, my dad always prays over me. Like we hug each other and says, all right, let's pray together. And that is something that like it always feels like a need. Like it's just like I needed that. And then also the times of like when a family is struggling, like bringing it back to prayer, not letting it go into like confusing arguments or frustration or worry, but bringing just like, okay, there's a lot of emotions going on right now.
Yeah.
So
real.
let's pray together.
Well, and how obvious is it? We think we know all the answers, but we try to figure it out instead of leaving it up to the person who knows everything.
Yeah. Right.
Person is downgrading. He's not a person.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, I also think like as you are starting, so we're more talking about like founded families, but in starting families, I mean, you started on the road there. I mean, you got the 2 now, the 1.
Oh yeah,
as in not kids. Like
I'm married.
You're 2 and they're now one. Anyway,
Yep.
but in the start can be part of the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
And so maintaining that regular, just like, okay, we got to make sure that our hearts are aligned with each other,
Mm-hmm.
and that singular heart is then aligned with the Lord's heart.
With God, yeah. And I think it's super common where people reach the plateau of success. They get to where they want to be. Like you get so close to the Lord before something big happens, whether it's a wedding or graduation or whatever else you may have. And then once you get there, you thank Him for it and then live out your life. Just go about your daily business. And it's a sad reality that so many people do this. But it's like, if you're taking such a healthy supplement in prayer and in supplication with reading your Bible and, like having that lasting relationship, and you just let it down because you've gotten where you want to get,
Right.
where you want to get isn't the end of where you want to get.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. I got another good question here. How do you handle disagreements or conflicts within your family while staying true to your faith?
I'm going to let you take this one.
All right. So for me, one of the things I think is the most interesting is when it comes between the child and the parents, because there is the commandment, honor your father and mother, but that has been taken a lot of different ways. Some take that to mean just like do whatever mom and dad say, no matter what they say. But then you have, parents who are not good parents. And then does the child have to do bad things that their parents say? I don't think so.
No.
I think that honoring the father and mother is understanding where they come from, that they are older, have more experience, that they brought you into this world. And so they have more things that they can help give you, and so respecting that. But then it's also the honoring your father and mother by loving them enough to, almost not in a full you're wrong, but the accountability of why.
Right.
One of the things that I think my parents have done well with is helping me and allowing me to figure out reasoning for things beyond just saying because I said so, or because and like we talked about, like understanding the purpose and reasoning of things. And so in a family, not just between parents and children, but like in any relationship, is almost a different sense of accountability, and it operates differently for each relationship, for siblings, for parents, for older sibling, younger sibling. It's a different dynamic that needs to be navigated, and husband and wife. But I think some semblance of accountability, of recognizing of God grants all of us wisdom in certain facets, and in sometimes the child teaches the parent, or the older sibling teaches the parents how to parent. And so it's figuring out that accountability dynamic.
I agree. And on top of that, I think that when it comes to disputes with your family members, there's a lot of humility in argument whenever you know that you're coming from the side that's scripturally backed. You don't have to worry as much about disagreements if you know you're the one who's right because you believe in, and that doesn't sound very humble, but the truth is it is. If your priority and what you're pushing is only backed by God, not only, but backed by God, then you have less to worry about. So the other things will work themselves out. If they disagree with what I have to say, that's okay. But if you're disagreeing with something petty for no reason, that's not very humble. You need to be humble by sticking to your guns and make your guns the Lord's guns, and then you're chilling. You'll be good.
Reminds me of 2 Timothy 2:23, which is that was my main scripture for 2020, was do not get in foolish and stupid arguments that only lead to fights. And that set it off alone. I would ask in your state, when both are speaking from the word, because when one thing says it says this here, and then it also says this here, but both of you are having different interpretations, and it's just or it's when one person says God told me to do this, and another person says, well, God told me to do this, and those things are in conflict.
Right.
So then how do we navigate that kind of conflict?
Well, I think that there is wisdom in sticking to what you believe, but I also think that it's foolish in not listening to counter wisdom.
Yeah.
So, like, it's humble for you to be like, I'm not going to argue with you because I know, and I'm going to stick to what I know, okay? But I also think that it's not very humble for you to be like, I'm not going to listen to you whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, like, you kind of have to find a happy medium of, like, this is what I know to be true. This is what I'm sticking to. This is what I have set my foundation on. But your foundation is set on that. And I see that you're a good person. I see that your life is fruitful. I see, like, all of this stuff. So, like, disagreeing with me, be like, well, I have all these reasons that I believe this. This is what I've set my foundation on. But you set your foundation on that. The least I can do is lend an ear. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but hear them out, you know?
Yeah.
All right.
One more good question. What are some ways you practice forgiveness and grace with your family?
Very tough. I think grace is easier to give the closer that you become to being like Christ, which is a long journey.
Yeah.
Forgiveness, to be honest, I'm not sure that I'm the right one to have this question asked, just because I don't know. Like, I don't really get mad at people. Like, it's usually pretty easy for me to shrug things off. Not that I have like a huge problem forgiving people. Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not sure.
I would say not in the same facet. Like, I don't have, like, grievances against my parents.
That's what I'm saying.
But especially, like, there are families that do have a lot of struggles, and I think it's getting past the idea. One, forgiveness doesn't need to happen in an instant. Sometimes it takes months. Sometimes it takes years. And it can be a hard process for sometimes a family to go through the stages of forgiveness, because if a parent wrongs their child, that can have a lasting impact, and so sometimes it'll take the child years, and they'll need to leave and figure things out in order to get to a state of forgiveness with them, and that's okay. It's hard. It's not ideal, but sometimes that's how it is. And then similar facets, when a child has, really struggled and, pushed everything in a way and gone all against the rails, sometimes the loving thing as a parent is to, like, I love you, but it's hard to see you like this, and I need you, like, our current situation is not working. So in love, letting you, not letting you go, but like allowing the time and space to figure things out. And that's why, like, forgiveness and grace is honestly, like, in some of those aspects, super difficult. I have not had that experience of, like, needing years to forgive, or, like, fighting with everything in me to offer grace.
And that's more so what I'm saying.
Yeah,
too.
but it is definitely, like, it is an aspect. But I think it's the letting go of the expectation that forgiveness needs to happen tomorrow, and being okay with somebody taking their time to either forgive you, or knowing that you need more time in order to forgive right. Because you don't want to forgive hastily. Like, we use I forgive you, like, very flippantly, yes, a lot, like, right immediately after somebody does something, but then we'll talk about it the next week and bring it back up.
Yeah, there's a distinct difference between I forgive you and I forgave you.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times I feel like it's I forgave you in that moment, but then a week later it's just like, hey, man, you did that thing to me last week.
It's like, oh yeah, it's just and then, like, for true forgiveness is a clean slate.
Yeah, I would say, like, it's a clean slate, but understanding and learning from what happened.
How possible is a clean slate from a human perspective, though?
Yeah, I feel like I must have used it on the podcast before, but, like, forgiveness feels like a house, and, like, sometimes somebody comes into your house, takes a sledgehammer, puts a hole in the wall, and then walks out.
Oh, I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, and then you could just choose to hang a painting over it and just say, oh, it's not there.
Yeah.
But really it's there, and it's starting to get drafty in the house because you're just letting it fester. And then or you could patch the wall, take the time to fix it, But then what's after is what's different. You could let that same person walk in your house with the same sledgehammer, and then they could hit the wall in the exact same spot. Now, we don't have to let that person in with the sledgehammer or let that person in. Like, healthy boundaries after forgiveness is still like a full thing. It's still, it's wiping our heart, wiping the slate of our heart clean of the festering anger or grievances against that. Not necessarily like saying just like, oh, yeah, we can operate exactly as we were before.
Right.
Like, boundaries are a very healthy thing.
I also kind of think that in a sense, I don't believe in evolution, but I'm going to use the word evolutionarily. I think that we're sort of evolutionarily hardwired to not forget negative circumstances, you know? So like forgiveness in the sense of like, I forgive you as a person, but I'm not going to forget. So it's like a lot of people think that forgiveness is like the idea of a clean slate that I was talking about earlier.
Right.
I think it's like giving the person another chance.
Yes.
I don't think it's forgetting what they did.
Yeah, it's
Although, even as much as they wish that you could.
It's more like I forgive you, but I'm also learning from this past experience. So that I think kind of sums it up pretty good for family and forgiveness as well. So our last topic is the great unknown.
The future.
Yeah.
Future.
So checking with ChatGPT again. It's been given some pretty good questions.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe this could be something that we do more often. You know, like because it's essentially a guest. It's essentially a guest who's coming on to ask poll questions. You know, like we both love speaking our mind. You know, so. As for this one, though, I'm interested to see what it has to say, because this is something that's going to become very real to us very soon.
Yeah. Now, also, like these, like yes, ChatGPT is giving good questions. I'd love to hear some of your questions.
Yeah, for real.
Like,
you guys are better than AI.
Much better, and you guys also get a lot more personal. So yeah, okay. What role does hope play in your perspective on the future?
The church that Brooklyn and I attend, Greenville First Christian Church, has a mantra, says it everywhere. Hope changes everything.
Oh, yeah.
And I love to think about that because without hope, what do you got? I think of like Lord of the Rings and the White Tree of Gondor as like all of like the forces of Mordor are coming down on the city.
Right.
There's like one bloom left, which is supposed to signify hope. And then like, you know, like the good guys show up and then everything works out hunky-dory. But as you continue on, a pessimistic outlook is only going to get you to the bare minimum. Like even that is going to get you to the like the bare minimum.
Yeah.
If you tend to have more optimistic look on things, I have a feeling that typically things are going to work out more in your favor.
Yeah.
And I don't know that the evidence necessarily to back that, but if you always like if you're a negative Nancy or a negative Nathan,
maybe
things aren't typically going to work out for you.
Yeah. I mean, hope and faith are so intertwined.
You're right.
And
we have our hope because we have our faith.
Yeah. And like hope, like faith is the practice, hope is the mindset. And so hope is that mindset of just like, you know, I'm trusting in you, God, even when it's just like everything around me is just like falling apart and doesn't look like anything's going to work out. It's the hope of like, it's not the just like, oh, I think it's going to happen or I know it's going to happen. It's just like, despite what happens, I am staying, you know, hopeful and faithful in God that like, no matter what, even in death, he's got me.
Right.
And so it's not to say
That's so cold. Like Stonewall Jackson. You know the story of Stonewall Jackson?
I don't know.
Stonewall well, he has the nickname Stonewall because he was a Civil War Confederate general.
Okay.
And he was up on a horse and all of his people, like in the heat of battle, and everyone asked him, like, aren't you scared of dying? You're like up on the horse with your little one-shot pistol in the middle of battle. And they said he stood there like a stone wall, and he wasn't scared of dying because he knew that even if he died, he knew where he was going. Right. Yeah. And it's just an interesting story. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good. But yeah, I think like especially with our unknown future of like we all have so many unknowns right now. Like I don't know where I'm gonna live or what job I'm gonna work at post graduation. Yeah. I mean, you're entering the world of marriage, so I mean, hope and prayers for you. But just for all of the things that we can't control and that we don't know of where we're going to end up, how we're going to end up, it can be really hard to, even have any degree of certainty of what's going to happen. But the hopeful mindset of just like, despite, I will remain, in the Lord's joy.
Right. You don't need to have certainty to have hope.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. How do you balance living in the present while preparing for the future in accordance with your faith?
Well, I think that often we get so caught up in living in our present to prepare ourselves for our future that we forget to live in the present.
110, 200%. I mean, we kind of talked about that, touched on a little bit earlier, like just like, do we have to like, spend these 4 years of college like living for the years that will come after?
It's so sad because like so many people just robot through their weeks. Oh, I have to get this done.
Living for the weekend or something.
Yeah. Everybody's working for the weekend.
Yeah.
But so I find even sometimes with my wife, she's like, because I tell her, like, take a second, just sit down next to me, like enjoy the time like that we have, these 5 minutes or 10 minutes or so. And even that makes a huge difference because I'm a huge procrastinator, but I have an advantage because like whenever I get into that so I have like a hyper mode that I can get into that I can get copious amounts of homework done in a very short amount of time. And it's pretty good work. Like I'm a 3.3 student. So like in the time that I have that I'm not doing homework, I get to look at life and see it from like a more broad and hopeful perspective versus somebody who feels like they're always going.
Yeah.
Which is my wife. She feels like I never have time to do anything. And I was like, well, you do have a lot on your plate, but since I choose and pick and choose whenever I'm going to sit down and like live in the moment and like take heed of everything that's going on around me, I'm just like a happier person. Not than my wife. She's a very happy person.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
No, I got you.
I'm a happy person than the usual guy.
Yeah.
Who runs through life without thinking.
Definitely. But it's so important to, even in our like preparation times, to make sure that we're not like living to make tomorrow good, but like living in the good of today. And Jesus talked about it all the time, just like today's problems are enough for today. Like give tomorrow to the Lord, in the sense of just like, yes, like as I was describing, there's certain things that I need to do now for preparations for the future, but not letting that trump my need to live in today.
There's a song by Casting Crowns, and typically it's a good episode of Theo Thoughts if I bring up a Casting Crowns song. I'm realizing that in my head. But it's called The American Dream. And it's about this guy named John who is working to give his family the finer things. And throughout the song, it's like, "Hey, Daddy, can we go out and play?" And he's like, "Not this time, son. I have no time to waste. Maybe tomorrow." Right? And then like it goes on to say like he works all day, but he can't sleep at night. He says things will get better. Just give him a little more time. But then he's like his kids and his wife, their life is like flying through his eyes, and he's just working to give them a castle on the sand. And there's a part of the song that says, "I'll take a shack on the rock over a castle in the sand."
Right.
Because he works all day and he can't sleep at night.
Exactly. Yeah. That really plays well into our two topics back about work, about just like spending all that time, like just working to try and give better. Just like, I really like that. Like I'd rather take a shack on the rock
over a castle in the sand.
That's good.
Yeah. I listen to the song. It's fire. Yeah.
That's really great. But yeah, that's really great.
One more question, maybe. We've been hitting it pretty hard today. We have over an hour of recording time. So this is good. I like this.
All right. I think this will be a good finisher.
Okay.
How do you see the concept of eternal life affecting your perspective on earthly life and the future?
We do everything for the kingdom. What really matters here? I'll go back to the song we just referenced. Like, our shack on the rock, I'm okay with living in it because I know what I'm going to live in whenever I get older. And that's why you see people who have nothing with so much joy and so much sometimes you see people who are on their deathbed the happiest, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Sometimes you'll go into like a hospice ward, and then you'll see these people who are so close to death, and a lot of times it's somber, but every once in a while you'll see somebody who's ready. And it's just it's a very very awe-inspiring thing.
Yeah. Yeah, also thinking of just like how small the time here on earth is
in comparison
to what's going to come after. And in the facet of just like, we have the opportunity here, kind of what we were talking about last week, to get little tastes of heaven every now and then. And so like trying to reach and grab for those opportunities where heaven touches earth and the lines are blurred.
Yeah.
And in the idea of like the concept of eternal life, of just like, I can take comfort working hard now, knowing that one day the work will be done.
Right.
In a little bit different than, because it's different thinking like working hard now for like retirement when I'm 60 or whatever. But the difference between working hard now to help build the kingdom, build a family, for the kingdom that comes after. And like when Jesus talks about, and even the prophets, it's just like, yeah, the earth can be kind of crappy sometimes, but just like hold out, because blessed are the ones who, like the Beatitudes, like who are going through all of the crap right now, because you will inherit the kingdom of God.
Yeah. And reckless abandon is a huge part of that too. There's something so powerful about somebody who's so sure of themselves and what they believe and what's going to happen afterwards, that they abandon themselves with reckless.
Yeah.
Without wreck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Words are hard.
Right. So yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Thank you, ChatGPT, for joining us today.
Yeah, very, very good guest. So yeah, that is all for now. Sorry about not Instagram post for the past episode. It completely slipped mind, but I checked the views. You guys are watching it, so that's good.
You're the best. You're the best.
Yeah, we love you guys.
I'm looking at you, Sherry. I don't know if there's a Sherry who watches, but if there is, that's going to be pretty cool.
Please comment, Sherry, if you're out there watching and
Sherry.
listening.
We do this for you and everyone else too.
Yeah,
John.
Oh, that's an easy one. There's got to be a few Johns out there.
Okay.
Anyway, so we want to thank you guys for checking it out. Again, check our Instagram for more purposeful, regular updates about episodes at theo_thoughts.podcast. Of course, check out our YouTube. That's where you'll see the episodes first. And then get out to Spotify on the weekends. Going to start doing Theo Thoughts Thursdays. The YouTube will post on Thursday, and then you get the Spotify one on like Saturday.
Triple TH.
Yeah.
TH cubed.
TH cubed. I like that. So anyway, for now, I'm Judson Page.
I'm Jordan Peternell.
Love y'all.